Great Scott! Here's your look at the new NECA Toys Back to the Future Ultimate Doc Brown. Marty McFly and Doc Brown experience the adventure of a lifetime in an unlikely time machine as they travel to the past, the present, and the future, setting off a time-shattering chain reaction that disrupts the time-space continuum. $1.21 gigawatts. Before we get a closer look at the new NECA Toys Back to the Future Doc Brown, let's first get this guy clocked in to see how tall the figure stands. I'd like to thank as well the folks over at NECA Toys that provided the sample of Doc Brown that we're having a look at in this review. The figure stands 7.2 inches in height. We can switch that to centimeters, revealing that Doc Brown is 18.5 or 18.4 centimeters to be exact. Though we don't have a 50s Marty McFly yet, we can move over Doc Brown and compare him next to the previously looked at Marty McFly. I think scale-wise, these work quite well. Doc Brown obviously is a lot taller than Marty McFly in the movie, and I think they're roughly about the appropriate size to one another. Mind you, again, this is Marty McFly from the 80s. We can only hope we do get ourselves a 50s-inspired deco for Marty McFly to go along with the Doc Brown that we're having a look at in this review. Doc gets some pretty neat looking stuff. One thing I would say to throw some extra 411 into this review, when you are taking Doc, the tray that contains the figure out of the box, beeline it back to the box. Yes, beeline it back to the box, because on the inside packaging, there's a clear window plastic envelope. And on the inside of that, yes, we're spinning a story here. Inside that, there's some other trinkets that you will want to retrieve to go along with your Doc Brown figure, such as, included with the figure inside that box that I was talking about, he comes with some blueprints, some schematics, if you will. Now, mind you, the blueprints are only done in paper. There's nothing really, unfortunately, to be said about this other than the fact it looks good. Unfortunately, though, as you can see, there's a little bit of an indentation to it. One of the downsides of using only just paper to produce these. I would love to get myself like a little tabletop that I could put not only this on, but some of the other smaller paper things that come included with the figure. So that's really neat, the fact that he comes included with that blueprint. Smaller than that, he comes included also with the little sketching that he drew of the flux capacitor. Let me spin this around so you can actually see what it looks like. The way that they've done it, even though the paper is technically flat, but they've done it in such a way and printed it in such a way that it looks like the paper has been crumpled up. That's a nice effect. Again, unfortunately, it's just a paper material that they used for it, so some longevity, I suppose, could be questionable if you don't decide to display this with the figure. Obviously, probably put it back then in the packaging and just display Doc Brown with the accessories that you want to display him with, and then you can save these and, you know, guarantee that they're not going to get damaged. Comes included with that. And this is a nice little touch that he comes included with. A little letter, right where you can see right there. It says 1985, of course. Right at the very top there. The little cafe. It's kind of really hard to make this out because it is so really small. You can see right there the little envelope, of course, that's addressed to Marty McFly. There, it looks like on the back there. Again, it's just paper. Nothing really outside the realm of just printed on paper, but I appreciate the fact that at least NECA Toys included this to go along with the figure. We'll put those to the side and try our best not to lose those. Then we'll kind of get to the meat of it, the more plastic accessories that come included with Doc Brown. He comes with some swappable hands. He comes included with a wrench. We'll have a look at that wrench first. The wrench, as you can see, is all molded in plastic. Obviously, it's molded in plastic, but it's been done in such a way with the scratchings added to it that it gives the wrench a sense of age, that it looks like he's had it for a while. I do appreciate the fact that they did add those little touches of wear and tear to the wrench, and you can also put that into his hand as well. It actually fits into these hands or the other human hands, the flesh-colored hands that we're going to be looking at in a second. Just slide the wrench into place like that. Put that on his side. As I said, he comes with a couple of regular, just skin hands. That's kind of a weird way to describe it. He comes with a couple of flesh-colored hands. Ungloved hands, maybe would be probably the best way to describe it. You can see that both the hands are sporting watches. One watch is facing upright. The other hand, on the other hand, is having the watch facing the opposite way. If you do want to swap the hands out on Doc Brown, we'll go ahead and just pick up the figure, remove the wrench, put that to the side, and we'll just wiggle these hands right off the sockets, just like that. You do actually have to really go in there and reach to pull them out, because if you look at the sleeve of the jacket stretches out a little bit longer than where you would normally expect to find the peg hole for a hand. So go ahead and just take the appropriate hand, obviously thumbsies go in, and just pop that back into place. There's one hand, and we'll do the same on the other. The only thing I would really critique on the hands themselves, well actually before we do that, I want to show you the defaulted gloved hand that he comes included with. Not a bad looking hand at all, I would say. Nice touch also that they did was, you can see right there, they painted the end of the glove to be the same color as the rest of the jacket. So you have a continuation of color making its way down. We'll go ahead and just pop the gloved hands off right there and remove it with the replacement hands. Like I said, the only thing I would critique the hands on is that while the face has been painted in, that's such a great looking face, the hands, sadly, no. They're just relying on just the straight out plastic. And they actually come across a little too shiny when you're looking at them, for example. It's just like I said, it's a very minor gripe. Just the fact that they didn't paint those hands. The plastic isn't quite the same. So it comes with that. And then, of course, it comes with a swappable head sculpt as well, depending on how crazy you want your Doc Brown to actually look. Now, this one does have the bandage, of course, on his head. A nice little touch is that they actually still put the wounds on the same side of his face. See where the Band-Aid is? The little wound right above his eyebrow. That's a nice little attention to detail that NECA Toys thought of. I'm not really sure which head sculpt, in all honesty, I prefer. Both of them are superior head sculpts. I can't believe how close these look like Christopher Lloyd. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, we want to decide to display the head with this head sculpt right here, or at least the figure with this head sculpt. To swap the head out, let me just spin this around so to show you guys the back of the hair there. But to swap this out, all you're really going to have to do is take the head and pop it off. I know it's just normally something you're used to doing. I was a bit surprised, actually, that Doc Brown used such a large ball peg at the end of the neck. I would have actually thought that they would have just used the cylinder post, but instead they used the larger ball joint. It's a little bit, it just means there's a little bit more involved when you have to take the head off and put the head back into place. I'm going to leave him decapitated for the time being. You horrible monster. I'm going to leave it off for the time being because I also want to talk about his glasses. He comes with the little welding goggles, as you can see right there. These are all just soft plastic. So they are very susceptible to breaking if you're going to be stretching them beyond the means of what they're really designed to do. The one thing I will say, though, about the goggles, let's just get the camera to actually focus in on there. It's such small accessories. The goggles look good, but they could be a little difficult to get onto his head. Let me show you what I do, and then it's entirely up to you if you want to do the exact same thing. The reason why I left his head off is because I have seen some people saying it's difficult to stretch the goggles across the top of his head. Now, obviously, it is going to be really a bit of a struggle because he's got so much hair that you have to stretch the goggles across. Let me throw this out there as a possibility for a way to work around that. Tilt the head sculpt up. You can see right here, there's a little ledge between the hair and the area where the head's going to attach to the neck peg there. What you're going to do is just take the goggles, feed them up rather than feed them down. And then just get myself a screwdriver. I want to get something small enough that it'll help me fish this around. And all I'm really going to do is bring the strap up so I can get it around the ears. Just like that, on the one side. Do the same thing on the other side. Just take the goggles, feed them up, get them just around the ears. And I always find, again, it helps to really use like a small little tool, just like a little screwdriver. Makes things a whole lot easier. And then all you're really going to do, providing this stays focused, you're going to take the end of the screwdriver. Again, it doesn't really matter what, I'm just using a flathead screwdriver here. And I'm just going to take this and I'm going to pull it very carefully. And I'm going to fit it down into that ledge. Just tuck it down. There we go. Like tucking a small child into their bed. And there you go. There you go. You didn't have to stretch it from the top across. Do it from the bottom. Fits perfectly fine right there. And then from there, of course, then you're just going to go ahead and put that onto the ball joint. Push this down. I actually find it was more difficult to get the head onto the ball joint than it was to actually get the goggles in place, simply just because, again, it's got such a large ball joint, such a large peg joint, but just fit that into place like that. And then you got Doc Brown with his goggles on. It's not going to stay like this for the rest of this review, but it's just to show you how easy it is to actually get those goggles in place. Don't do it from the top. That's a no-no. You want to stay away from that. Instead, do it from the bottom, and you'll find every single time you'll be able to get those goggles in place. So happy with this head sculpt I am that I'm going to stick with it for the rest of this review. But again, if you guys want to see the difference between the two, any way you slice it, really, that's a bang-on likeness to actor Christopher Lloyd. I think when it's all said and done, when it comes to displaying these figures for myself, probably going to go the route of displaying it with this one, because that is just absolutely awesome. And you can see this one does have the sculpted open mouth. They even went the extra mile of sculpting in a little bit of stubble on Doc Brown's face. You can see right there. That's perfect. Unfortunately, like, the paint does such a great job on the head, and then unfortunately when it gets to the neck, there's no additional paint that's been added to it. So there's a slight bit of deviation between the color of the plastic on the neck and, of course, the coloring of the painted plastic that they use for the head sculpt. Spin it around again so you can see the back of it. I would say, without any doubt whatsoever, this is easily my favorite of the Back to the Future figures that NECA Toys have put out. And again, to show you where we started from, bring in Marty McFly so you guys can see the difference. Well, obviously, there is going to be a difference between the two. Doc Brown is by far the best head sculpt I think we've gotten. Biff Tannen, you know, surprisingly enough, 55 Biff Tannen I thought would have been my favorite head sculpt so far. But then as soon as I saw the images for Doc Brown, I knew instantly, yeah, that's going to be the winning sculpt right there. So good. Now, of course, this Doc Brown does have his longer trench coat going. Underneath this is a nice patterned shirt. You can see button up on the top. Paint is really clean on this too. And how intricate that patterning. I don't know if a machine would have gone in there and done that versus these being hand painted. But the idea of somebody actually going in there and painting each one of those dashes in the gold and the black would be just mind-boggling to me. You can't really remove the jacket. I mean, of course, you could take the arms off. You could just pop those arms off and then just remove the jacket, because it looks like the inside of the shirt is finished all the way around. The only downside, of course, is the fact that the sleeves will still be the same material and color as the rest of the jacket. Again, this is all like soft plastic. So it really does help, too, when it starts moving the figure. When we look at the articulation on the figure, it really does help the fact that this is softer plastic. I do like also the material that they used for the pants. Even though it's still plastic, it goes to show sculpting does go a long way. And by adding this kind of cross-hatching that they've done to the pants, it instantly gives it a different style of material than just simply sculpting it in plastic. It still obviously is in plastic, but I really appreciate the fact that they did go in there and sculpt those legs, sculpt those pants. A nice little touch of detail also is the fact there's a little hole at the bottom of the pants. You can see where that rip has started. And underneath that is quite a visible sock, Doc Brown's sock underneath. There's his shoes right there. You can flip the figure upside down. And yes, of course, he does have peg holes on the undersides of his feet. So if you do want to make use of a display stand, NECA does put out clear stands after all. By all means, you could plug those into place. As for the articulation on Doc Brown, let's go through that right now. His head rotates back and forth. It goes up, it goes down, and you can also rock it back and forth that way. The arms hinge out, not quite at a full 90-degree angle bend. I would say closer to probably being like a 45-degree angle bend. You can move the arms forward and back. I find it's a little on the tight side, and I don't know if it's just the fact that it's rubbing up against the plastic of the trench coat that's maybe slowing things down. But I noticed that the arms are a little stubborn when it comes to moving them back and forth, especially more so back than moving them forward. In addition to that, he's got a double hinge on the elbow, one there, so you can bend that elbow in two different places, and then of course you can rotate the hands all the way around, back and forth that way as well. Upper torso is on a ball joint. It's a little on the tighter side, but you can rotate the torso. The legs split out. You can see there's the ball joint inside there. They go forward and back, and I'm surprised they squeak as much as they do. I don't know if it's just, I really don't know what's causing that squeaking, to be honest. Maybe the fact that the joints are just close, tight quarters. It's causing a little bit of squeaking when I'm moving it back and forth. It could also be the fact that it's rubbing on the inside of this part of his torso. I don't know why I'm drawing everybody's attention to it, but that could be the one thing that's causing the squeakage when it comes to moving the leg back and forth like this. He does have a single bend in the knee. You can rotate the lower leg, and like with all the other Back to the Future figures, his feet hinge up and down this way, and you can also ankle rock them back and forth this way as well. Such a good-looking Doc Brown. I really want to commend NECA Toys for putting out, by far, the best-looking sculpted Back to the Future figure that we've gotten up to this point. Prior to this, I would have certainly said Biff Tannen. The 1955 Biff Tannen would have been by far the best Back to the Future that we've gotten. And now I feel like he's been dethroned by Doc Brown. We can, again, just move Doc Brown over, bring in Marty McFly from 1985. I certainly hope, though, that we are still going to be getting ourselves some more Back to the Future figures. Of course, Doc Brown here is from 1955. Marty McFly here is from 1985. Hopefully, at some point, NECA can switch the roles. We do get ourselves like a 1985 Doc Brown with his lab coat on, or his lab, that zip-up suit that he wears. Maybe we also then, on the other end of things, we'll get ourselves a 1955 Marty McFly that you can then pair up with Doc Brown from that time frame. The only way that NECA Toys could have improved upon an already perfect Doc Brown has had they included that sort of helmet thing that he's wearing on his head when Marty McFly first encounters him. I think that would be a great addition. Probably not something that could just simply sit on the existing head sculpts. They probably would have had to come included with a third head sculpt with that big helmet thing on his head. But I would love to see that maybe get as a future release down the road. I'm sure there's still lots of mileage ahead for this Back to the Future line from NECA Toys. There's still a lot of characters, really, when you think about it, to cover off. Even if you think of just Doc Brown, how many different times have we seen Doc Brown? Literally, how many different time frames have we seen Doc Brown? This one is from 55. There's still 85 Doc Brown, and there's also one from the future as well. Now, whether those Doc Browns, if maybe foretelling the future, will end up being as good as this one, again, only time will certainly tell. I love the look of this Doc Brown. Was probably a little hard to read, I'm sure, over the course of this review, how much I was enjoying looking at this figure. By far, it is the best Back to the Future figure that we've gotten to this point. Some difficulty, of course, swapping out the two different head sculpts. I'm not really sure why specifically they used a ball peg when they probably could have used a small cylinder post. I don't know if it has something to do with the size of the head sculpt, and maybe that's what dictates when they use that cylinder post and when they use that ball peg post. But I'm surprised that they didn't use the cylinder, because it just would have made things a lot easier when it comes to swapping out the head sculpts. And of course, just as a little 411 that I provided in this review, if you are having a difficult time putting the goggles on Doc Brown's head sculpt, don't try to stretch them across the top. Instead, look from below. You can fit them over his chin, and you'll be surprised actually how easy it is when you do it that way. Short of that, like I said, I'm really excited to see what we're going to be getting in store for us when it comes to future Back to the Future figure releases. Let's just hope we don't get 50s Doc Brown, because I want to really see what they're going to be doing with an 80s version Doc Brown, the Western Doc Brown, the future Doc Brown. There's still a lot of Doc Brown to cover, and provided NECA Toys are continuing to release this, I'm staying on board collecting these Back to the Future figures, because I'm really loving this line so far. Let me know down below in the comments section what you guys think of the Back to the Future Doc Brown from the 1950s. Also, for your video question for today, it's not necessarily Back to the Future related, but what's your favorite time-traveling movie? That's a good question to be asking you guys. Let me know down below in the comments section. I'd also like to thank the folks over at NECA Toys that provided the sample of Doc Brown that we had a look at in this review. If you guys are new to the channel, let's just say you stumbled onto this channel with this very review right here. Come on in. Welcome. Help yourself to a Rice Krispie square. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, new member of the mob. Turn the bell notification on, and make sure you come back to this channel Monday to Friday, 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as that's when we'll be having a look at a ton new videos. And we will be looking at more NECA reviews. More NECA reviews lined up, coming your way. So as always, keep your peepers ever peeled. And as always, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you guys next time.